Welcome back to another Reaper blog tutorial. Today we're going to be talking more about recording with takes, recording without takes, and just general information about the different recording modes in Reaper. I want to start this one off by going over some of the things that have been said in the comments of the previous video. And let's start off with why do you turn off crossfades? The main reason to turn off the crossfades is so that when you get to the end of a take and it doesn't complete the full take, it's not the same length. With crossfades on, when you drag the trim over those items, they would start overlapping, crossfading, and then you end up with these like 1 millisecond splits sometimes. And so when that's off, you can just trim the earliest one out to the end of the song. And the other reason is that I do all the crossfading for editing in a second editing stage. So there's recording, and there's comping, and then there's editing. And then let's talk about why we should learn all the different recording modes. So there's a lot of different recording modes, all these different settings that you can have set for when you're recording in Reaper. And they apply to different situations. If you're always recording yourself, you can go through these settings, find the one that works for everything. But when you're self-recording versus recording someone else as a recording engineer, you need to often approach things in different ways and sometimes multiple different ways within the session. For example, if I'm recording guitar and I don't like what I've done, I can just hit delete and start over. If I'm recording for someone else, they usually want to keep every single take and go back all the way back to take one and compare, maybe split and comp from different sections. You can't always delete every time you stop. We will come back to that topic of deleting after recording later in this video. So knowing the different modes and what you can do and the strengths and weaknesses, let's say, or the different scenarios where they work best will just help you be a better, more well-rounded recording engineer and operator of Reaper. If a particular mode that you're working in isn't working for you, you can troubleshoot it, you can solve problems, you can meet the needs of your clients much easier if you know all the ins and outs of the different recording modes. And then the final reason to learn all the different modes is to get out of bad habits. So if you're in the habit of always deleting as soon as you hit stop and not listening to it and not keeping any takes, that can be a really bad habit if you ever go and record someone else. You can get into the situation where you're just reflexively hit delete and then start recording again, and that take is lost now. So it can be a really bad habit. It can be really hard to find the files that were actually good takes if you're not proactively managing your takes during the recording. So with that out of the way, let's talk about the different recording modes that we'll be going over within this video. So we'll be looking at tape style recording, layer style recording. We'll look at the different monitoring modes that are available on tracks, such as monitor input tape auto style, and we'll look at an action for canceling a recording if it's not going well and you know you want to delete it. I'd also like to talk about recording with multiple tracks simultaneously and working with grouped items within this video. All right, let's get started. All right, so we're going to start this one off by taking guitar track number 2, which is just a duplicate of the first track. It has the same effect settings except for that I've swapped the overdrive pedal to a different one. It was a tube screamer, now it's the like a Boss overdrive. Pan these opposite, hard left and right. I've got this on input 1, which is my guitar, and we'll just double this. I'm in normal record mode, metronome's on, set to pre-roll 2 measures. So let's see if I actually remember what I played last time. All right, so that's a pretty good take. So we're actually going to look at the new recording that overlaps existing media items section. So the default is to split items and create new takes. The second mode is trim existing items behind new recording tape mode. I'm going to keep trim content behind media items turned on. And again, crossfading is turned off. And that reminds me, there was a comment on previous video about setting up custom actions to set all of the different preferences and things as kind of presets for the different recording modes. I think that's a great idea. I haven't tried it myself. Everything I showed in the previous video regarding options menu stuff can be set with actions, with the exception of these loop source for recorded items. I always recommend turning that off. You can always choose to loop things. I prefer to loop things after editing. Loop source for recorded media items, I would just turn that off. Yeah, but things like automatic crossfades can be turned off. That's just this function in the main toolbar. So yes, for the different recording modes or scenarios that you use, I think setting up a shortcut to get into that mode with all the optimal settings is a great idea. So let's look at the different monitoring modes for a track. The first one is monitor input. You're always listening to that input when this is enabled and the track is record armed. That means if you're overdubbing and you're playing along with the pre-roll, you're going to hear your guitar and the track playing. That'll be a little weird because as you're playing on top of something, it may have a chorus effect, and you're going to hear it louder because two tracks are playing, or your input and the track is playing at the same time. And then when it gets into the punch-in section, suddenly it drops in volume because it's only the input. Monitor input, it works. You can use that for everything, but monitor input tape auto style may be another good option to use when you are punching in. Tape auto style will play the track only with your input muted outside of the punch-in area. So when you are in record mode, time selection, auto punch, you have monitor tape auto style on. During the pre-roll, you won't hear your guitar. During any track playback that's happening outside of the time selection area, you won't hear your guitar or your whatever the input is. So that's a really useful mode, I think, and let's record in that mode. Let's make a time selection in this section, so just the second part of the verse. I will set my record mode to time selection auto punch. I'm record enabled, volume up. So you can hear it, and we've got 2 bars of pre-roll, and as the pre-roll is going, I'm gonna strum the guitar so you can see what it's like. Okay, so I messed up that recording, but I was kind of thinking more about the monitoring style. As I was strumming wildly, you couldn't hear that coming through this track because it's not monitoring until the punch-in point. Because we were in the mode new recording that overlaps existing media items, trim existing items behind new recording, that means that in this section, I actually don't have 2 takes anymore. It's just this one take. If I show all takes in lanes, there's no take there. So if I delete this item, I do have this area that I can heal, which is Control H. So I can heal that if I didn't want to edit, if I wanted to restore that recording. But you can get into situations where you can record over the same area multiple times and then completely lose your takes. But if you're punching in, there's probably a mistake in that area. You just want to fix that mistake. And for you, that could mean you want to get rid of it forever. So what they call tape mode in the options menu could be what you want. Let's do another recording. So keeping the same settings, let's do another recording in this section, and I'll try to play it right this time. Okay, so I've punched in that section, replaced what was there previously. I'm going to punch in again, same section, just to see what happens. In this case, that previous take is completely gone because I've overwritten it with this mode, trim existing items behind new recording tape mode. That's kind of destructive recording. It replaces that section. You can't get that back other than by going to the Media Explorer, going to your project directory, and then finding that file based on its recording, which is probably my most recent one, this one. So just keep that in mind. It's not a great option for all situations, but I see voice actors using that mode quite a lot. Next, we're going to new recording that overlaps existing media items, create new media items in separate lanes layers. This is a weird one, in my opinion. And for this one, I do recommend turning off trim content behind media items when editing. It can be a little weird if that is off, and it's another one of those sort of destructive modes. I'm going to play the same thing, and we'll just have a couple different layers here. And I can stop anywhere. And this looks like takes, but if you look more closely, it's actually not takes. This is two separate items. You can see there's independent effects chains and volume controls for each one. Unlike a take where they are linked together and only one of them will play. So actually, both of these will play at the same time with this mode, and it's kind of weird. And I find after a couple takes, you don't know which takes are actually going to be audible. I think maybe because of the way that it goes to the track effects or something like that. But with a virtual guitar amp, it's been kind of weird. So in this section, I'm going to play something completely different. I don't know what I'm going to play. Something like that, maybe. And so we'll hear this part with different performances playing through the same amp in case that's something you want to do. So if I play this back, what's actually going to play here? It all kind of like mashes together and it sounds weird. Maybe that's just because of the going through the guitar amp, but you can kind of hear like only the loudest parts and then like what's in the quiet parts plays through. And you can mute one. It's a weird mode. There's got to be some good situations for that, but playing all of these back simultaneously is kind of weird. Okay, so here's an action that you might find interesting if you do find yourself recording in this mode and then decide that you want to go back to takes. So we can right-click, go to take. We can use this action, implode items on same track into takes. And now I've got those 4 different recordings in takes, and it's all within the same item. Let's undo that. Let's do layers and a smaller section. I had no idea what I was going to play there. But you can see here that this item is completely independent. It can be moved left and right. You can move it up, which will kind of split all the items there, which is a little weird. But I think that's because this action here, trim content behind media items, is when editing is on. Yeah, if that's off, then I can't actually move it up and down. If you do want to move it around, you might want to use this action called free item positioning. And that makes each item independent and it's like a sequencer, or it's like an arrange view within an item. And you can actually like move things around in kind of interesting ways. Definitely not beginner friendly, but it can be useful in certain situations. In general, I don't recommend it. All right, so I'm just going to get rid of the takes that I don't want in that section, and I'll just have this one that was actually fine. So up next, we're going to be recording a bass, and let's do it in a way that we've got like a bass amp and a DI track so that I can show you the subtle differences for recording multiple tracks at the same time. So I'm going to set up 2 tracks, and they will both be set to input 1. I'm going to name them bass and bass amp. The second track will have some sort of distortion. I'll use the Bass Professor Mark II. So this is a free JS plugin, and I don't know, I'll just kind of turn this up a little bit. On this track, I'm actually going to use the record output mode, and I'll record it as, you can't see it on the capture, but I'm going to choose mono. Right, so I've got a bass tone set up with bass DI, bass amp, but actually I'm going to record the bass amp track with record output mono. So it actually gets the sound of that amp sim on it. I will use record mode normal, and we'll just do it. Sometimes you get this warning for recording multiple tracks with the same input. Most likely you'll be using like input 1 and 2 for a DI and an amp. But yeah, so you can just ignore that. Something I forgot to check before I did this recording was auto grouping newly recorded items. This is a function of SWS extension. So that's why you see this little chain link icon on these 2 items. I'm actually going to turn that off, and I'll ungroup these so that it's more like what would typically happen if you don't have the SWS extension installed with that option enabled. So when you record on these 2 tracks, you need to keep these tracks in sync for every edit, moving. So if you split one and change the take, that's never going to work with the DI and the amp, or if that's different drum mics or whatever it is. They need to be linked together. So you can right click, go to group items. The shortcut by default is G. I actually have it on Command G. As long as a couple things are enabled in the main toolbar, click it once for enabling grouping globally. And also, if you right click, there's this option, selecting one item selects group. I highly recommend you keep this one on all the time. So when you click on an item, both of them are selected. If you make a split, they both split at the same time. You can do another split over here. If I hold down Alt, I can drag and shift the timing. And those microphones, which we checked for phase already, are going to be kept in sync. It's extremely important to keep things that are recorded simultaneously grouped together. That doesn't mean that a bass DI plus a drum kit needs to be grouped together. Those are different enough that you can work with those independently. So that's a situation where this toggle auto group newly recorded items, you might want to have that turned off if you're recording a lot of different things. All right, so let's replace this last part of this recording with a new take. All right, so we're going to record into this section of the song, and I don't have that auto group function enabled. So immediately after recording, I need to press on my computer, it's Command G. For you, it'll be G or whatever you choose to group those items if they're not grouped automatically. I made the exact same mistake as last time. Okay, so immediately after recording, when you hit the spacebar, those new items should be still selected. So all you need to do is hit your grouping shortcut, and they are now grouped, and they'll be linked together, and you can move them. You can change the gain. You can do all sorts of edits, and they will be kept together. As we work on this last section of the track, this section here, let's move into the topic of deleting a bad take as we're recording. So let's say I don't like that take. What can I do at this point? If it's selected, I can hit delete. That removes it. If I touched anything else, like if I touched the track to disable the record monitoring and hit delete, now it's going to ask if I want to delete the track. So just keep that in mind. It does matter what was last selected. If the arrange view or this area, the item is the last thing you touched, deleting will affect that. The other thing you can do is hit undo immediately after stopping, and then you will remove that last take. I'm going to redo, and now let's look at this action, which is transport, stop, delete. So by default, it's numpad 0. I actually don't have a numpad on here, so let's try I'm going to try F12. Okay, so F12 isn't assigned to anything. So as I'm recording, if I have a bad take, just slap F12 instead of stop, delete, or stop, undo. During the recording, I can press F12. Here we go. Let's punch in one more time on this. All right, I don't like that one. F12, that cancels the recording, doesn't commit that recording to the disk, pretty sure. Let's check our project media directory, refresh it. There was no take 19. That could be a dangerous one. Use it sparingly. I would rather you just record into a new take and delete what you don't need after, just to make sure, maybe there was something cool in there. Or maybe, I don't know, maybe your doorbell rings the next take, and then and your toilet overflows the take after that. You never know. It's better to have something than nothing in that section. So that was recording with tape mode. We looked at layers mode. We looked at grouping the items and undoing a recording in a couple different ways. So I think we're going to leave it there. There is actually more to cover, believe it or not. When it comes to MIDI, there's several other interesting things you can do with the different overdub modes in there. And that all interacts with these other things that we've already looked at. So if you want to see MIDI recording next, let me know in the comments. If you want to see voiceover specific things, like voice acting or audiobook recording specific things, let me know in the comments. But yeah, there's a lot to it. There's a lot more than people realize, I think. when it comes to this stuff. And knowing all this stuff, it just arms you for being a better recording engineer. If you made it this far, thank you so much. Give the video a like. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Follow me on Facebook and Twitter. Support the Reaper blog through Patreon. Visit reaperblog.net for a lot more tutorials. I did that wrong. Okay, I'm tired. Goodbye.